Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, aside from graphical quality settings, one of the first things you might change within any PC game's menu is the field of view, or FOV. This setting determines how wide or narrow the scene in front of the player is, and as such will reveal more or less in terms of an observable area. The higher the FOV setting, the more you see, and vice versa. There is no right or wrong setting, it's all down to personal preference, though I always leave the figure at default across all my hardware benchmark tests. But does changing the field of view actually affect in-game performance, and if so, by how much? It's a question I get asked a few times a year, so I thought I'd finally try to answer it. The easiest way to compare performance between FOV settings would be to stand still and switch between different values, or recreate the same conditions as accurately as possible over and over for each test, perhaps by following an identical route in an identical location. This is certainly more exciting than just standing still, though perhaps a little less accurate. Any significant differences should be noticeable though, outside of what could be considered a margin of error. The first test actually had the opposite effect of what I expected. I repeated the same run 3 times in Cyberpunk 2077 with the game's lowest FOV, the default FOV and then the highest FOV settings. I've stitched the runs together in editing so that I'm not showing identical footage, albeit with different fields of view over and over again. I expected the frame rate to drop slightly as I increased the FOV slider each time because there is more on screen with each successive run, but it worked the other way here. Perhaps the game's engine renders objects with more detail when they're closer to the camera, and a lower field of view means a constant stream of higher quality assets. I don't know, I'm probably talking out of my butt, but I tested Cyberpunk multiple times in different places and found that with this hardware, a higher field of view meant a slightly higher average frame rate. Weird. Far Cry 6 behaved more how I expected it to, with the lowest FOV setting, in this case 60, performing the best, followed by 75, which is default, and then 120 offering the lowest average frame rate. That said, you probably won't notice or feel these differences while actually playing. The real-world gaming experience isn't really impacted by these changes, not at this frame rate anyway. Personally, I wouldn't play at the absolute highest field of view setting, as it can start to look a little bit warped and end up being a little nauseating, but as I mentioned, it's all down to personal preference, and this might not even be high enough for some people. The difference in Forza Horizon 5 is negligible when altering the different chase cam values. I have to say I really like maxing out the field of view with this one. Things don't really get warped and distorted, you just get to see more of the beautiful landscape that this title offers. There are a few little dips here and there, regardless of the settings you choose. Finally, it's Halo Infinite. This followed the same pattern as Far Cry 6, whereby an increase to the FOV figure meant a slight dip in performance. This is what you'd expect. Again, the game was still playable no matter the setting, and if you're using a number somewhere between the default and the highest values, this difference is going to be even smaller, and the same goes for all of today's tested titles. Overall, the performance differences will vary on a game-by-game basis, but this is just a handful of examples tested with a single hardware configuration. It's best to see for yourself how FOV changes affect your favourite games. I hope this has answered a question that a few of you have asked me over the years. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on it down below, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll be back with a longer video in the next one.